In a lot of woodlots like this, it's really riparian zones that provide some of the most diverse microhabitats for native wildlife. So here's a tiny feeder stream coming in, just a little sort of intermittent stream that feeds down into Lisha Kill. And we have some, some characteristic plants that you'll find here in the riparian zones that maybe aren't as abundant up in the uplands, and even some, of course, that are obligate in terms of growing in these riparian zones in these wetter, more saturated areas. Here's a beautiful down log that's just covered with moss, showing signs of having been here for quite some time. And here's a break, and there's the rest of it. We've got a massive pine right here, going way up to the top of the canopy. Beautiful tree. And then there's something over here coming down this hillside that's pretty interesting, and that is another downed tree. Only what you can see here is that the root mass has been exposed where this tree blew down. And this is something that we see a lot in these riparian zones, where the soils are a little more, well, the roots are more shallow because the water table is a little higher. And that means that when these trees get big and a big windstorm comes through, they're often rather likely to topple the entire tree, not to just snap off, but the whole thing will just fall over and the roots will come with it. So here's our downed tree, and you can see it's quite a beauty, quite a big one. We've got downwood on the ground. Of course, when that tree came down, it took a bunch of other little trees with it, like that one. But here's where it was joined to the ground. So now we've got this beautiful mass of exposed roots and sort of a vertical shelf face that's just loaded with little nooks and crannies. And these things, of course, hold a lot of soil when they're fresh. After a number of years, they'll break down. It'll be just more roots, and then eventually just sort of a bump covered in moss. But these little crevices can be favored nesting locations for a number of otherwise ground nesting birds like juncos, water thrushes, phoebes will build a nest on the side of these things, winter wren. So these are little microhabitats that you're only going to have once the trees get big enough to topple over and create this. And therefore this is something that you're not finding in a younger forest. Other species of wildlife that make use of these include certainly invertebrates. You can often have water collected at the bottom in the little indentation that's created, and then you can get a little vernal pool develop, and now you've got breeding location for amphibians. And even depending on the exact situation, just the indentation at the bottom can be a favored place for a bear to sort of dig out and make her overwinter den. So just the fact that a tree is dead is what makes tremendous opportunities for all sorts of wildlife in these communities. And that dead tree is something that is only likely to happen once you get bigger trees. So we need age on a lot of our woodlots to create the sort of habitats that a lot of our native species need.